Greetings Guardians, my name is Bife here. So, there's a quick video here that I want to go ahead and make because lots of stuff has happened recently. The TWAB that was just released gave us more information on the upcoming dungeon and I wanted to make a video speculating on it. However, my time is a bit limited, so this is a bit more of a quicker off-the-cuff video, less scripting and this more notes. But first, a word from our sponsors and longtime friends of the channel, Advanced GG. You probably know them at this point if you've followed my channel for a while, whether you're using their sleep formula for a better night's rest, or their energy and focus formulas to power through the day, they've got a quality product on lock. And they're the only supplements drink on the market of this type that's FDA approved too, so it's not just me saying that either, it's actual written fact, studied, and everything. They also avoid throwing gnarly stuff in their products. They use all-natural formulas for them, so you'll find a more natural green tea caffeine in their energy formula and a melatonin-free formula for their sleep products. I've also got some merch with them, so you can go ahead and grab yourself an ice shaker, or you can get yourself a desk mat. I have the ice shaker and the desk mat right here on my desk, in fact. I've been using them now for the space of about 6 months. No wear and tear. Go ahead and use code LAWDADDY with a capital L and a capital D for a 10% discount on your next purchase. And thanks again to Advanced GG for sponsoring this video. Having said that, the new dungeon was revealed and we got a selection of materials in that reveal. Namely, most importantly for my first point in the video, we got the dungeon's name, which is Vesper's Host. So, what is it? Well, I think if we're going to go ahead and look at everything to do with what the dungeon is, we need to first break down the fact that the dungeon is, in fact, a strange beast, because even just based on the image that they've provided, there is no easy way of actually understanding what the hell's going on here. There's a lot of visual language in this image that I'm going to break down bit by bit. That being said, I think we can start with the name first, Vesper's Host. What the hell does Vesper mean? I think we all know what host means. In the context of dinner, it's just to say, hey, come around and sit down and have dinner with me. But in the case of anything else, it is literally to allow something to occupy something that is yours, or in the case of what this sounds like, yourself. If a spirit is being hosted within someone's body, they are occupying that person. So, yeah, host implies something a little bit dreadful, but what does Vesper mean? Well, it means evening or dusk in the old context of Latin. More commonly in these days, it's referred to as prayers that one conducts in evenings. All that we know about the dungeon realistically is communicated to us in the TWAB. I'll pick up a bit more on the name in just a moment though, because I think there is more going on there. So, the TWAB includes the image that I've been showing and throwing up there, or rather that Martin has been throwing up there for you as he edits this, and it also, of course, has the name, and then it has a few details. So, let's go hunting. The TWAB states that in order to enter the dungeon, all Fireteam members must acquire the Rogue Network quest from Spider in the Lost City's seasonal hub. So, for starters, neat. I like that. In fact, no, that does get a, hey, that's neat. Because I like returning to what is most likely going to be the Elixni Quarter. I don't know that to be the case, but it sounds like it. More importantly, let's pick up on some of these details. The name of the quest, Rogue Network, implies that there is a Vex element to the dungeon, and given that the art seems to prominently feature a Vex gate at its center, that's not too surprising. However, looking more closely at things to do with what's going on with the name and what's going on with the art, there's a lot more stuff that we can tell. So let's break down the image just a little bit and also see how it connects with the name. So, starting off, take a look at what's attached to the gate. It's a lot of Elixni, Flotsam, and Jetsam. It's tying this Vex architecture down and holding onto it from all sorts of different angles, and yes, Destiny veterans, it is indeed reminiscent of the Tangled Shore, and that in itself is not too surprising, considering that Revenant is supposed to take place in the Tangled Shore. Fikrul supposedly has raided an old Elixni watchtower, or rather an old Awoken watchtower, my apologies, as his new head base of operations. It's his Vampire's Keep, it's his Dark Tower. So yeah, for this to all be set on the Tangled Shore isn't surprising, it's the vague area of the episode. But hold on just a second, because that's not just where everything ends. Let's take a look at the rings of the gate itself. There is a strange energy that's radiating off of it, and at a glance you could mistake it for solar energy, or even resonant energy bleeding off from the gate, but that's based on the color alone. But let's go ahead and take a look at things. Solar energy doesn't present as lightning, and resonant energy is a bit of a stretch, I grant, and it's maybe that way because the color matches, but resonant energy also doesn't appear as wild crackles of lightning. It tends to appear as geometric shapes. Strange, for certain. It doesn't look like solar, and I don't necessarily think it looks like resonant to me. And I don't think it necessarily looks like ambient Vex energy either. Radiolarian energy tends to manifest as ambient white light, not this deep yellow. So, what's going on here? Well, I think we can also look at the left in the top and at the bottom for even more visual language stuff, but we'll get onto that in a moment. Let's return briefly to the name, because this is where the first part of what I'm talking about comes in, and this is my first thing that I want to go ahead and put to you, which is that if we take a look at the name and combine it with everything that's going on in the visual language of the image, we get a vague idea of what might be happening. Vesper's host. That means something. If you imply the archaic language, it could mean that the dungeon's alternate, less fanciful and superfluous name might mean evening's host or dusk's host, or the host of the prayers of night, perhaps. There is perhaps another poetic interpretation, which is simply the host of the approaching darkness. Doesn't sound ominous at all. However, that also leads us to a few important points, which is that this dungeon might be then revealing something more about the future plot of Destiny. I'm not sure if we'll see the Winnower or anything, but if this ties some new threat in, I think that would be a huge win. If this does even mention, even slightly, even by whisper, the Winnower, I think that's a big deal too, because it's Bungie signposting where they're taking us next, which is something that I've told repeatedly in videos of critique and feedback as a important point for them to do. Don't just go ahead and tell the lore of now, tell the lore of tomorrow a little bit today, because otherwise you don't lay down the road for it. So that's cool if that's the case and if that is what's happening. It gives us a villain on the horizon that we might be looking forward to fighting, and I think we desperately need that. But there's also something else I wanted to bring up, which is an instance in which we've actually seen a host of Vesper before, and it happened in an old exotic mission that is very well loved, Presage. Now, I'm going to go ahead and take that most poetic interpretation of what the name of the dungeon might mean here, and I'm going to state that Vesper does indeed mean night, and therefore this means night's host. I think that this has happened before, and even more crazily, it's happened with Scorn. And you know why? Because it's the locus of communion that has been something potentially similar in description to this. The locus was used by Calus and his scions kind of as this crowned entity, this being that was laid within the crown of sorrow and was already dead, but was kind of reanimated using some of the magic of the crown and then connected to a dimension beyond its own. A dimension which was connecting to the Witness. This was how Calus initially contacted the Witness after having been ignored by it for so long, and after having known for so long that it would be his master at some point in the future because of one time that he saw it way off in the darkness. So yeah, we've had this idea that a Vesper's host has happened before in-game. It's just a very sideways interpretation. That being said, I think if there is a Scorn involved in this somehow, I wouldn't be too surprised either. The way that the locus of communion was used in Presage shows us something about the way that you communicate with certain entities that are paracausal in Destiny. It doesn't necessarily require it every time, but it seems like occasionally there is a much easier chance of connecting with an entity if there is some kind of host for it, and if that host is dead. And that is most definitely something that describes the Scorn, because the Scorn were chosen by Calus specifically because of that condition. They are undead fallen. So if there is a Scorn boss at the center of this dungeon, I think it's not necessarily a case of who that boss is, but what it's hosting. That might be the host. How that then connects in with this being a piece of Vex tech and everything else is a whole other question, but I think that's just the first thing that's worth considering. If this is a big reveal for a new villain, yeah, that might be the reason why. It might have been able to reach out through whatever Vesper's host ends up being, and the final boss of the dungeon. But there's much more to it, and I actually wanted to discuss another possibility for what's going on in this dungeon, and I think it's really much more exciting, but it's based off of some much more tangential evidence, and it's definitely not proven, so let's go ahead and get that out of the way before anything else gets said. So with that in mind, let's look up to the top left and down at the bottom of the image, and suddenly you start to see some other architecture that also looks a little bit similar. Namely, this looks like it's Bray architecture. It's got very Golden Age themes to it. It's strange because it doesn't look like it at first, but take a look. That's the same kind of dark steel gangplank, painted completely black, with white plating that you'll recognize from basically every Bray facility. More importantly, from every Bray space facility, like the Morning Star from Deepstone Crypt, or Seraph Station from the Season of the Seraph, and from the one exotic mission that came along with it. The solar panels are a decent fit for that kind of place too, and the curved architecture on the bottom really does remind me of the windows of a Braytech space station too. So yeah, I think this is a Golden Age station too. So we have all of these strange things going on. We have the visual language of the Vex, the Tangled Shore, Golden Age humanity, and some kind of strange energy resonating from this portal in the middle. And what the hell does it all mean? Is there a place that connects all of these things together in one? And I'm here to tell you that yes, there might be. This was something that was pointed out to me on social media, and the more I examined the image and the more I thought about it, the more I liked it. And the more I realized that I was willing to stake my claim and bet that this might indeed be the Cocytus Apertures. So, what the hell is the Cocytus Apertures? Let's start from the very beginning. Long ago, apparently, it was a Golden Age research station, but the context of it really gets expanded on by the people who discovered it. The context is expanded partly on intelligence stolen from the Awoken by the Hidden. It's based on the reports of a ship, a dead orbit ship in particular, that entered the station and its crew went completely mad. That ship was known as the Sophia, and it's based on the context of a cryptarch that went exploring there. The name Cocytus actually comes from one of the names of the rivers in the Greek underworld, of which there are 5. Cocytus is known in Greek mythology as the River of Wailing, and it is a tributary of Acheron, the River of Woe. It's also worth remembering that back in Presage, there was a reference made by Catabases to the state of the Glycon, the ship in Presage, when it finally got pulled into that pocket of darkness and when Calus's ritual was successful. He said that old Glycon had breached Acheron's wall, implying that they'd been pulled into the dimension of darkness where the ship was then found later, abandoned and with its crew all dead. I don't know if that's a connecting foundation, but remember what I said about the name Vesper. Yeah, interesting potential connection, but we won't read too much into that for now. The thing we will look into is the fact that Cocytus as a station, the Cocytus Apertures, they all have the potential for combining the influences that we're looking at. For one, the Cocytus Apertures are located in the reef or in the asteroid belt. That's why it's in Awoken territory, and that's why the dead orbit ship, Sophia, found it there. They were originally surrounded by Corsairs and, well, they were left there to die. And then you have further information that's gleaned from the Dust lore book. This features the story of the cryptarch Lavinia that I mentioned earlier, and there's a little excerpt that I wanted to read. Take a listen to this. Lavinia swears and beats her suited fist against her helmet. She's trapped in Cocytus. The last time the Awoken trapped anyone here, those poor souls went utterly insane. The doomed crew of the dead orbit scout ship Sophia called this place A113, an innocent catalog number. They had no idea that the gates aboard, once a Golden Age experiment, had been captured by the hive deity Crota. Those gates consumed them all. So, not only is this in reef territory, hence why you see all the flotsam and jetsam of the Tangled Shore, but also it was a Golden Age experiment. Hence potentially why you see Braytech-style space station materials linked in and strapped to the portal. And that might also explain the Vex influence, because remember, Clovis Bray, and for that matter the Ishtar Collective, muddled their hands in a lot of stuff to do with the Vex on a very regular basis. You sit there and look at the creation of the Exos and everything that happened on Europa, and it's all over there. But even something as simple as the creation of Soteria, the Augur Mind, back in the Spire of the Watcher, all of that involves Vex technology. So if the Cocytus Apertures were a Golden Age experiment trying to look into where the Vex portals go to, or maybe created portals to who knows where using Vex tech, that doesn't sound too far-fetched. However, the interesting thing about the Cocytus Apertures on their own is that they aren't gateways that seemingly link only into the Vex network, or if they do, they have since then been rent from the Vex's control. The Cocytus Apertures are gateways that connect to other realms generally by the sounds of things. Originally, they were a Golden Age experiment. Later, they fell under the control of Crota, and obviously the crew of the Sophia found that out and they turned completely mad. In Lavinia's time and the time of the Awoken, seemingly they were under control of the Nine. The Nine actually had certain intelligence reports which the Hidden stole, and in those reports, it appears that the Nine were trying to send things through the gate to our reality. It started as just a few atoms, and then it slowly combined into molecules, and then actual organic substances came through, and then barely living things that were an attempt at life came through, and then after that, well, we don't know, but it appears they may have sent Xur through there. I don't know if that's really what happened, because the story is left vague enough that we don't know, but the Nine apparently tried to reach out through this, and when Lavinia jumped through, there is a hint that she may have been captured by Savathun of all people, but it's also a hint that she may have ascended to become one with the Nine, and might have transcended our reality and immersed herself in their irreality, where everything is made of dark matter, where their existence only happens due to the shadow of our own existence. The point is this: the Cocytus Apertures aren't just gateways that link to one thing, they're gateways that link to seemingly a bunch of different realities according to who's got them in their control. So, yeah, what's on the other side? What has taken control of the Apertures? What is trying to force its way in? And why does that thing need a host? These are all important questions. Really briefly, I do want to touch again on the presence of the Vex-looking technology, because it is also entirely possible that the Vex are actually the host in question here. Remember that the first boss that we faced in Destiny was indeed the Heart of the Black Garden, a manifestation of the Veil that had been corrupted beyond repair, which was in itself this terrible thing of darkness. It then manifested itself by basically taking control of Vex frames within the Black Garden, which then came to life and started to attack and try to kill us. So, the idea of the Vex being a host for some greater entity of darkness is not completely unconventional. It's happened before, and in fact it seems to be a preferred survival strategy of at least one group of Vex, the Sol Divisive. Whether this is the work of the Sol Divisive or not is completely unknown, but I think it's worth remembering that this is something that could happen. We might see that there is something which is being hosted by a Vex, and who knows, if it is, could we connect to it? Again, I have to ask the question, who is on the other side of the gates? And where do the gates connect to? Whatever the host is must be in control of the gates, if it is indeed the Cocytus Apertures. If this is A113, I have a bad feeling about this. And hey, maybe they do indeed try and bring the Witness in as an element to this narrative and an element to the plot. Bungie did say that they would start teasing the future narrative for the upcoming expansions of Apollo and Behemoth, and that this would be the start of a new multi-year saga. So we'll go ahead and we'll see what's what with this. I'd be very interested to know what happens down the road, and maybe this is something big. Who knows? Either way, thank you very much for watching, and I hope you liked it. If you did, go ahead and let me know down below in the comments section, and tell me what you think. Are you a believer, like I've put forward in this video, of the idea that this is the Cocytus Apertures? And what do you reckon of my idea that this is indeed a host of night, and something that is merely a host to some greater entity that we are about to encounter? Fascinated to know what all of you think. Is there an alternative possibility that you think I might have missed? And given that this is all theory, go ahead and throw out your own, because who knows? One of you guys might be correct. I might be correct. Might all have no idea what's going on. Also, if you want more stories from universes near and far, go ahead and hit subscribe and the bell next to subscribe to turn on email notifications. But as per usual, know that your viewership, as always, is quite enough for me, and that in the meantime, my name is Bife. Rhodacia Arastra. I'll see you, Starside.